Alrighty, welcome back. Part two. We're doing JavaScript calculator. We've got the HTML down. It was pretty simple. It was just a form, right? I showed you how to do a form, input, and I gave that input an ID, and I've gave that input a default value, and I've even called a function using a input in a form, and that was it. Pretty simple, right? Yeah, it turned out pretty nice. We're just going to do some CSS now. And then let's open up some CSS stuff. Let's go share my screen. I'm going to bounce over here. And you can see JavaScript calculator does not a whole lot. But it doesn't matter. We're going to fix that right now, make it look all pretty. Let's start off with our body. Let's get something done with our body. Do background. The background, you can set this to a URL, all right, and then you can give yourself a background, a fancy background if you want, or you can just go background color and set it to something plain like black. Since I kind of like the way this picture I found here looks, I'm just going to kind of come in here and steal this. Try to, if working on a keyboard. On a laptop with a touchpad, it's kind of annoying. So I'm just going to copy that web address, Control-C, Control-V, and there we go. I now have a background. I like it. Looks like a desk. And you can kind of see it automatically starts, doesn't really look the same, right? So what do I want to do? I'm going to change something. So after you have your URL, you want to make sure that you don't have, if you're no repeat. Okay, what? No repeat. There he goes. No repeat. Center it and center it in both directions. All right, there we go. That almost looks like something. And then I just want to cover. So I'm going to go to background dash size and cover. All right, so I'm going to cover that. And something else that I want to do is I want to stick everything in the center. So I'm just going to go to text, line, and I'm going to center that too. There we go. Stick everything in the center there. And now you can see I've got something here. Something else you want to think about, some things that I usually just copy over. It's not quite the same as this. That's because you can add in these extra pieces in here if you're so inclined. So your background there, center. And again, you can kind of Google these, how to get a nice background size that covers everything that you want. All right. So again, I think it's Opera, Mozilla, your standard web. So once you have all that in place, you should be good to go. And you can kind of see it's automatically covering based on my screen size. And there we go. Ta-da. So body, URL, text align, all that kind of stuff. Good to go. So I'm going to save that. And now I have something that looks like a desk. All right, so no repeat, size, background, size, cover, and I have a center text aligned. Good to go. All right, next. This H1 we can do something with because I can't see it. So let's just put this H1 here. We're going to do something with this a little later on. For now, I'll just put the color to white. Here's what white looks like. I'm going to go with font weight. I'm going to make that bold. Bold. There we go. What else do I want to do to this? I have font weight, bold. And I will go with font size. I'll make it better, a little bit bigger, so maybe 3 There we go. Okay. There we go. So there we have this JavaScript calculator. It's nice and big here. And I have something that looks like a desk and a background, and there we go. So right away, it's starting to look like something pretty quickly. The next thing you want to take a look at is, remember how I have this main div, and it's called calculator, and it has an ID of calculator. So now I can call that ID of calculator, target that ID of calculator. And I can start doing stuff to this calculator div. All right, so I'm going to set a background color this color to gray. All right, so gray and gray, just so you know, it's the same thing. I was curious about that when I first did it too. I was like, oh, let me see this here. Is that the same thing? It is both ways spelled. I want a specific width. All right, and the width, I'm going to make this 250 px for pixels. I'm going to take a height. Again, this is just, you kind of play around with these numbers. You know it's going to be about 250 by 350. By 350, all right. I'm going to want a border, all right. And the border that I want is going to be only 1 pixel for me. I don't want it to be solid black border. Solid black border. Okay. Let's see here. What else do I want? Well, I'm going to want some padding around that thing. All right, so let's add in some padding, maybe 20 pixels or so. There we go. Bump that down a little bit. I want a border radius on there. Border radius of the same. I'll do 20 pixels because it just sounds even to me. Starting to look like something now, right? Look at that. It's starting to look like something. What else do we need? I need a margin, right? So margin. I want to move it down some. So I want to move it down pixels. Move it about 50 pixels. There we go. And now you can kind of see this starting to look a little more, stuff is coming into view here as we kind of see that. All right. So a margin of about 50 pixels. And I want auto. What is auto going to do? Whoop, right in the center. Check that out. Look at that, starting to almost look like something. And okay, so now this is the shadow. So if you notice, I like to play with shadows a lot, and I like to play with the box shadow. They kind of give me a three-dimensional kind of look. And after lots of fidgeting, I think I like this. 0, 0, 3, and 6. All right, and the color that I want, I don't want black. The color that I found was that. Ta-da! Well, that's looking pretty good. 350 pixels. There we go. Now it's looking more like the calculator that I want. Notice how the background is stuck there. If you want just a calculator and stuff to move in the background to stay the same and all my information to slide along that, you could add, I think it's right here, fixed. And you see how just the calculator moves now? All right, but I don't really want the calculator to move on there. So I'm going to take fixed off of that. I want it to look like the calculator is like on the table, right? That's the whole point of having that table there. Let's see, where are we at here? H1 white font size bold. We can always mess with this stuff up here, which I do want to actually, a little bit more later on. Good. So that's the calculator. Now I have a calculator. Looks like there's a calculator there. Now I got to mess with the size of the screen and the size of all of the buttons. Okay. So how do I go about doing that? Well, let's see. What did I call this? I called it display, right? Oh, yep. Called it display. So let's target the display. Target display. Again, this is all just styling, and I mean, you can get yourself pretty lost in messing with all this styling. I'm going to give you what works to give you exactly what I have, but feel free to play with all of this because this is kind of the fun stuff where you kind of mess with it and see what looks good. You could spend hours just messing with the CSS to get it to look exactly the way that you want. I'm going to add in a margin to the bottom of the display to move those buttons away from it. So margin, just bottom. And I'm going to set that again to 20 pixels because everything else was set to 20 pixels. So I figured why not? And it turned out looking pretty good. Check that out. See, 20 pixels for there and 20 pixels all around it because I had the padding of 20 pixels up there. See how that worked out? It's like I planned it out. And then a height. I need a height of 30 pixels. And in the end, I'm going to show you how to use an IDE and copy and paste this text into an IDE and do some workflow and some GitHub. And so actually, if you were doing this in an IDE like the one I'm going to show you, Cloud9, which they have on freeCodeCamp, or they suggest on freeCodeCamp, a lot of this stuff would start filling in as soon as you type, so you don't have to worry about as many typos, which is a big help as well, just so you know. So then width of the display, I'm actually going to use 10 EM for this. And the reason I'm going to use 10 EM is because that's going to go off the font size of the buttons here, and it's not going to look good yet. But this was one of my fine-tuning things I did later. I had it set to a certain number of pixels. I wasn't happy with it. And then after I set the size of the buttons and the font sizes, then I had to go back and do that. So that's what's going on there. Because it really is based off of the font size of everything else anyway, just if you were wondering. All right. So if you took a look at, so I used EM, which again, it goes off of the base of the font size. I was just checking something else real quick. All right. Let's see. I want a little border on there because this is going to make this look like, usually a screen is not on the same level. It's kind of sunken down a little bit. So the way I made that was I just gave it a border. And that border, I used 1 pixel border, and it was just solid black. Again, that's solid black. And I have something that's starting to look good. I want to put a little bit of a border radius on it. So border radius. And that border radius is I put on 5 pixels. Again, just messing with it until it looked about right. And then again, that box shadow. So again, this is all just built right into the CSS here. And again, I used 0, 0, 1, and black. Right? And as my color. And you can kind of see that kind of almost looks sunken down now a little bit, or at least that was the idea. You also could specify like 1. You wanted to go in and bring it darker and add some more dithering, make it look deeper. But I already had that 1 pixel on the buttons, and it looked like they were all the same depth. So give or take, you can add that extra 1 in there as well. That's kind of how far feathered out it looks. But I guess I'll leave it because I already typed it in with erasing it. Right now, I'm going to take this. If you start typing in numbers in this, I'm going to take off this disabled. I'm going to show you something. Right now, if I start typing in this, it goes from left to right. But calculators go from right to left. So because of that, I'm going to go back over here. Redo that. I need the text align here to be text aligned right, just so it looks good. So text align right. And then I'm going to set the font in here. So the font that I want, that I found, is going to be 20 pixels is what I'm going to, 20 pixels, 20 pixels, sorry, 20 pixels, and I want it to be bold. And you can see now that with this width 10 EM and this font of 20 pixels, you can see how that screen kind of fills that out nicely. And again, you can always mess with the width if you want, like what does 12 EM look like? Or 11 EM. Maybe I'll go with 12 EM. Sure. Why not? There you go. And again, you mess with this to your liking, whatever size you want, and you mess with the display and all these features. And you can set these to pixels. Doesn't have to be the EM. The EM changes, like I said, based on the text itself. And so I tend to mess with both of these at the same time until I get exactly what I want. So that's looking pretty good. Now the screen looks good. The calculator looks good. The buttons look terrible. And what did I call the buttons? Remember, gave the buttons the ID of keys. All the buttons have the same ID of keys, remember? Copy and pasted all these keys. They're all keys except for the equal sign. Cool. So let's go ahead and target some keys. Target, not what? Target keys. All right. And again, I'm going to set a width. And again, this was me playing with these values. That's how I know that these values work, because I set these to 41 pixels. The height I set to 35 pixels. And you can see these dynamically changing in here. Look at that. They're all starting to line up pretty nice, right? I also added a margin. All right, so the margin that I added in there was 4 pixels. And oh, look at that. See how that kind of blows out like that? Now you can kind of see that that all looks pretty nifty, right? Almost there. So the margin I did, it was 4 pixels. I added a box shadow too. Yeah, I know. I'd use it again. I might be overusing box shadow, but I think it looks good. So box shadow that again to 0021 black. 0021 black. There we go. Look at that. It's looking pretty nice, right? 0021 black. It's starting to get there. It's starting to get there. And you see how when you click on them, you're starting to see something happening now, right? And you click on them, they look like they're depressed. Not like depressed like they're sad, but you know, like you pressed it down. I'm going to set a border radius on these. Border. Usually buttons and everything don't have sharp corners on them, right? So set a border radius of 2 pixels. And you can set the pixels or an EM, but those 2 pixels, oh wait, you see what that does? So it kind of pops them off right there. Now when you click on it, look, now you can see it's turning blue. Oh, that's gross. I don't want that. So what is that? That's called an outline. All right. So I'm going to get rid of that ugly blue outline. See that blue outline that keeps popping up? That's ugly. Let's get rid of that, because it was looking pretty cool to that blue outline because I set a border radius on there. All right, so let's get rid of this outline. How'd I find out there was an outline there? Guess what? You Google it. So outline none. There we go. Look at that. That's satisfying. You almost hear the click, right? That looks very satisfying, doesn't it? Or at least it does to me, but I'm a nerd, so it looks good to me. Let's say that's all your keys. And the last thing I got to do is this equal, right? So I'm going to set up this little equal button the same. And it's going to be very similar, right? So Control C, Control V. This I call equal. Okay. There's equal, but I want equal to be the same size. I want equal to be bigger. So the width that I settled on there was 92. The height I left the same. The margin I left the same. 2-1 black, 2 pixels, outline done. And there you go. All I did was I changed the width. And I don't know. Let's. This is looking a little small now, doesn't it? Now it's annoying me. So let's maybe go 94 on the screen. Maybe 96. Again, it all changes a little bit, especially because I'm using EM as well. So there you go. 96 looks good to me. There we go. For this tutorial. And there we have it. Now we have a finished calculator. I'm going to save this. Go to my full page. And there we have it. Your full calculator with buttons. And you can adjust your height if you want. You want to bring this up a little bit. You want to make that height a little bit smaller. That's fine. Again, it's up to you. However you think that's going to look best. All right. The overall height, I might bring up a little bit. So I'm going to go to change view to my editor view. And let's look at the calculator. I have a height of 350. All right. Let's see, that H3 is, I don't really like the way that looks. Maybe I'll make this, see what 325 looks like. That looks pretty good, right? So even though, things change a little bit from thing to thing, and you can kind of see how over here it's kind of similar, right? And there we go. That looks good, 325. And again, change your height, change your widths, mess with all this stuff till it looks good for you. And that's really going to be your takeaway from this, all right? Well, that's going to be it for this time. When we come back, we're pretty much done, right? All we have to do is add a few JavaScript functions. If you want, you can add some box shadowiness to Control-C, to your H1 if you want. Right? Not the H1. I lied. Control-X. You want to add your box shadow actually into your text shadow, sorry. Over here it's a text shadow. I'll show you text shadow real quick. Shadow, text shadow, and text shadow, shadow. Text shadow works the same. And again, I think I did 2 pixels, 4 pixels, 5 pixels, and black. There we go. All right, there we go. And just, adding a bit of a shadow to it so it pops out. There we go. I like that better. I like that better. And now we have a JavaScript calculator all ready to go. And fancy buttons. Alrighty, so hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you all next time when we tackle the JavaScript, which is surprisingly simple, giving some powerful functions in vanilla JavaScript. So see you next time.